In the end, this infinite loop here is caused by this onload ingredients dependency. This effect, which fetches all our data, will run whenever entered filter or onload ingredients changed. That will be the case for the first time search is rendered, so it will definitely fetch our data whenever search is rendered. But thereafter it will rerun whenever entered filter changes, which we never changed because that would only be the case if you type here, or if onload ingredients changed, which we're extracting from our props. That is the case if the parent component is re-rendered. The parent component is re-rendered because in the end, the first time we loaded data, we were calling onload ingredients, which calls this filtered ingredients handler function. And in there, we're calling set user ingredients, which changes the state, which re-renders this component, which means that here, of course, we're also creating a new filtered ingredients handler function because this entire component reruns. And in the end, this is just a JavaScript function, right? So even these functions you have in there, they still rerun, they're still executed again. In the end, this is just a variable which now receives a new value. Of course, we know it has the same logic as before, but technically it's a new function object in JavaScript. So it's a new object, we pass that to onload ingredients, and since it's a new object inside of the search.js file, this is different to the last time the effect executed, and therefore it will re-execute the effect. Because we re-rendered the parent, all these functions are created new, and, well, we got a different value, we rerun the effect in the search component. To prevent this from happening, we can use another hook provided by React. That's the usecallback hook. The usecallback hook allows you to wrap one of your functions with it. Let's say this function. So on the right side of the equal sign, you use callback and simply wrap this around your function definition like this. And now you also pass a second argument to usecallback. First argument is your function. Second argument also is an array with the dependencies of this function. This function has no dependencies because set user ingredients is this special dependency since it's in the end returned by useState as this updating function by useState. So that's special, and other than that, we have no dependencies here, so we can specify an empty array here. By the way, you could have also passed set user ingredients as a dependency here. It still wouldn't rerun because this never changes. That's guaranteed by React. That's why you can omit it here. You can also specify it. But this will now never rerun, and therefore what React does is it caches your function for you so that it survives re-render cycles, and therefore when this ingredients component re-renders, this specific function is not recreated, so it will not change. So what we pass to the search component to onload ingredients will be the old function, the same function as on the previous render cycle, and therefore in the search component, on the use effect here, on this check, onload ingredients will not have changed, and therefore this effect will not rerun. So now let's comment onload ingredients back in, and if we now save this, we see no infinite loop. Still one extra render cycle, to which I'll come back in a second, but if we have a look at the network tab, no extra requests sent. Only if I type here, we're sending extra requests with every keystroke. We see filtering is also working. For example, if I enter apples, we only see that. If I enter something which makes no sense, we see nothing. For bananas, we see bananas. That's working. We're sending a request with every keystroke, which might not be ideal. And we have an extra render cycle initially. So we should probably fix that. But we certainly have no infinite loop anymore. Before we ensure that we don't send a request with every keystroke, let's ensure we don't have this extra render cycle initially. And this is actually coming from a redundant HTTP request we're sending. If I open my developer tools and there the network tab, if I reload, I get a bunch of requests, but in the end you see there are two requests fetching our ingredients, these two requests. They're both sent to ingredients.json on Firebase. Now why do we have two requests being sent there? Well, because we send one in search.js, here in useEffect. When this component gets rendered, this effect executes. That's how effects work. They execute when this component gets rendered, because all these dependencies, of course, have changed compared to the previous render cycle, because there hasn't been a previous render cycle. So this gets recalled. And there, of course, entered filter is empty initially, so we have no filter set. Hence, we fetch all data, and then we call onload ingredients to, well, use these ingredients. And in addition to that, we're also fetching data in the ingredients component. There we also have useEffect, which we only execute once when the component loads, but we do that. And there we also fetch ingredients. Now, since we already are guaranteed to fetch ingredients because we're doing that in search, we of course don't need that extra useEffect thing here in the ingredients component. So we can get rid of that because we are fetching ingredients with search component. So with that, we're still loading it, but now we got rid of that extra render cycle.